Okay, so let's dig into this really interesting idea from the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's from Lord Kakila, right? This concept that we can actually experience hell or heaven right here.
Yeah, not just somewhere else later on. He basically says, sometimes you see things on this planet that look a lot like those hellish punishments described elsewhere. It's quite a statement.
It really is. And for this deep dive, we've gathered quite a bit of material, haven't we?
We've got the actual verses from the Bhagavatam, of course, and some commentary, but also personal stories, near-death experiences from devotees.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and a comparison chart looking at suffering here versus, well, versus hellish suffering, plus diagrams of the Vedic cosmos. And you even found connections to Black Mirror.
I did. It's surprisingly relevant in places. So I guess our goal here is to explore this whole idea. Like, is earthly suffering sometimes a mirror, maybe a sort of preview of what the Vedic texts describe about consequences and the afterlife?
Exactly. And looking at that Vedic view of what happens after death, but also, crucially, finding the path beyond all that suffering.
Right. Understanding how karma might be playing out, not just, way off in the future, but right now and what comes next.
Hmm. It's about the mechanics of it all.
So let's start with that idea, earthly suffering as a glimpse. We have that chart comparing the two. What jumps out at you there?
Well, the first thing is the shared purpose, you could say. Both seem to be about education, karmic education, and purification.
Okay, so it's not just random suffering. There's a point to it.
From this perspective, yes. A way to learn to balance things out.
Yeah.
But the chart makes it really clear there are big differences too, like duration, intensity.
An escape, right. Like here on Earth, suffering might end, maybe through relief, or even just death itself providing an escape from that specific suffering.
Exactly. Whereas the hellish suffering is described as continuous. It just keeps going until that particular karmic debt is, well, paid, no breaks.
And the intensity level, that's another key difference. Our bodies here can only take so much pain before shutting down.
Right. But the suggestion is that in those other realms, the bodies, if you can call them, that are specifically designed to withstand much more extreme experiences
Mhm.
without breaking.
Wow. And the examples on the chart really bring that home, don't they? Like comparing chronic disease to something called Kumbhipaka hell.
Or intense mental anguish here versus Rarava hell, or even poverty reflecting to Misra hell. It's like echoes. The principle seems similar, just on vastly different scales.
It definitely makes you think differently about struggles here, doesn't it? If you see them as having maybe a deeper karmic reason, not just bad luck.
It could change your whole perspective, maybe seeing it as a lesson or, like you said, purification. It adds a layer of meaning.
Does facing difficulties here with that kind of understanding, maybe with acceptance, potentially lessen
Yeah.
future suffering?
That's a really interesting question the texts imply. If this is a milder form, maybe how we react now matters for what comes later. Perhaps learning the lesson now prevents a tougher version down the line.
Hmm. Okay, let's shift focus a bit to something pretty grim. The description in the Srimad Bhagavatam about what happens after death to someone really focused on, well, just material stuff.
Yeah, it's quite a vivid and, frankly, sobering account. Chapters, or rather, texts 19 to 34 and chapter 30. He talks about someone who lived just for material gain, often, not caring how they got it.
Amen.
Then, at death, they're met by the Yamadutas. These are the messengers of Yamaraja, the Lord of Death.
The agents of cosmic justice, sort of.
You could say that. And it's described like a capture. They bind the subtle body. There's the mind, intelligence, false ego, the consciousness carrier with ropes.
So the physical body's gone, but this subtle part carrying our awareness gets taken.
Precisely. And the journey to Yamaraja's place is described as incredibly harsh. Being bitten by dogs, suffering from burning sun, extreme hunger, thirst, exhaustion.
And being whipped.
Yeah, being whipped to keep moving. It covers a vast distance, 99,000 yojanas. It's a huge Vedic measurement. But it happens super fast because the subtle body isn't limited like the physical one.
That sounds absolutely terrifying. And when they get there, the punishments.
They're brutal, burning, being forced to eat your own flesh, creatures attacking you, limbs torn off, thrown from heights. It's very graphic.
And there are specific hells for specific things.
Yes, like Tamisra and Antatamisra are mentioned for illicit activities or exploiting others just to benefit your own family, enjoying things selfishly at others' expense.
And Rorava.
That's for people who hurt others out of envy. So specific actions lead to specific consequences.
And Lord Kapila brings it back to Earth, saying these kinds of conditions, these hellish things, we sometimes see them right here.
Exactly, reinforcing that connection. It also mentions that if you earn things sinfully, The people who enjoyed those earnings with you, like family, they also share in the negative reaction, not just the person who did the deeds.
Oh, really? So it's not just the individual.
They share in the sinful reaction, yes, but the text is clear. The actual hellish punishment after death, the journey, that's faced by the individual alone. Your stuff doesn't go with you, only your karma.
And it's described as a cycle.
Mm.
Hell, then maybe lower births, then eventually another human chance.
Yes, if spiritual understanding isn't gained, you can end up back in that loop, experiencing harsh conditions, maybe non-human forms, then back to human life for another try.
It really emphasizes the need to, well, find a way out of that cycle, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Which leads us to understanding how we experience these different states. The Vedic idea of different layers of the body is pre here.
Okay, so we have the physical body, the one we see and touch. That's the gross body.
Right, temporary. Then there's the subtle body we mentioned, mind, intelligence, false ego. Think of it as the software running the hardware, almost. It carries the karma.
And the different types of karma, sanchita, parab.
Yeah, Sanchita is the total stockpile from all past lives. Prarabdha is the portion of that karma that's ripening now, the stuff we're experiencing in this life. And Agami is the new karma we're creating by our actions now.
Okay, so subtle body carries all that. And then there's the hellish body. That's a third type.
Yes, the Narakasira. It's distinct, not physical, not exactly the subtle body that travels, but a specific form given for experiencing those hellish punishments.
And its characteristics are different.
Very different. It's described as being incredibly sensitive to pain, but also basically indestructible by that pain. It has to endure until the karmic sentence is served.
Tailor-made for suffering, essentially.
You could say that. But importantly, even that is temporary. It's not eternal damnation in the Vedic view. It's a purification process, however harsh, that eventually leads back towards the possibility of a human birth again.
So these bodies are like different vehicles the soul uses for different experiences. Earthly life, transmigration, punishment.
That's a good way to put it. And which vehicle you get next depends on your karma, assessed by Yamaraja and his record keeper, Chitragupta. They determine if the balance leads to a more pleasant birth or, well, a hellish one.
It's a complex system of cosmic justice. Now, you brought up Black Mirror, which seems like a leap, but how does that connect?
Well, it's uncanny how some episodes explore similar themes, just using sci-fi concepts. Take White Christmas. Remember the cookie technology?
Vaguely, it was like a digital copy of someone's consciousness.
Exactly. And they could manipulate its sense of time. So for punishment, they could make this digital copy experience, say, millions of years of solitary confinement or torturous repetition, like hearing the same song endlessly, all within a few minutes of real-world time.
That's deeply disturbing. How does that relate?
It mirrors the Vedic idea of a special body designed purely for punishment, when you can't escape through death because it's not physical in the same way. The cookie is like a digital hellish body. And the time dilation aspect is also fascinating, how subjective experience can be stretched or compressed, making suffering feel potentially eternal.
Wow, okay. I see the parallel. What about White Bear? That one was also about punishment, right?
Yes, but differently. There, a woman is subjected to daily psychological torture, reliving her crimes discovery, but her memory is wiped each night, so she wakes up, fresh to the horror, every single day.
How does that compare to the Vedic idea? Because you said souls remember their sins in hell.
Right, that's a key difference. The memory wipe in White Bear contrasts with the Vedic idea where remembering your actions is part of the punishment. Like those dogs biting the subtle body on the way to Yamaraja, it said, to remind the person of their misdeeds. Awareness is central to Vedic karmic justice.
But the inescapability and the repetitive nature of the suffering, that resonates.
Definitely. The feeling of being trapped in a loop of consequence.
Yeah.
Also, think about the subtle body again. It experiences the journey to hell, feels the pain, remembers. It's like that digital consciousness in White Christmas, experiencing without a gross physical form.
Okay, so the subtle body makes the journey, experiences things, and then it gets transformed into the specific hellish body, the yatana sharira.
That seems to be the understanding. The subtle body departs. It's modified or used for the journey and judgment. And then for the actual punishment phase, a specialized body, the yatana sharira, is manifested, perfectly suited to endure whatever specific torments are needed to balance that person's karma. It ensures the experience is complete.
It's incredibly detailed and kind of terrifying, honestly. Shifting slightly again, the texts even describe the size of the soul itself, don't they?
They do. It's described as incredibly tiny, 1/10,000th part of the upper portion of the hair point in size.
That's almost incomprehensibly small.
It really is. Hard to even visualize.
And yet, this minute spark is what gets extracted, makes the journey, gets the hellish body, experiences everything.
Exactly. It highlights just how extraordinary consciousness is, that this infinitesimal point is the actual self, the experiencer, capable of inhabiting all these different states and bodies.
Mind-boggling, as you said. So, given all this potential for suffering, this complex cycle, is there an escape route? You mentioned devotion earlier.
Yes, absolutely. The Srimad Bhagavatam presents bhakti, devotional service to the Supreme Lord, Krishna, or Vino, as the way out. The story of Jamila is probably the most famous example.
Tell us about him. He wasn't exactly a saint, right?
Far from it. He had lived a pretty sinful life. But right at the moment of death, as he saw the Yamadutas coming for him, he instinctively cried out the name of his youngest son,
Who happened to be named?
Narya, which is, of course, the name of the Supreme Lord.
Ah, so it was unintentional, but he said the Lord's name.
Exactly. It wasn't planned devotion, just a desperate cry for a son. But according to the account, that single heartfelt utterance of the holy name, even indirectly, was powerful enough to summon the Lord's own messengers, the Visuddhas.
And they intervened.
They did. They challenged the Yamadutas, arguing that because Ajamila had uttered the Lord's name, even unintentionally at the time of death, he was absolved of his sinful reactions and beyond Yamaraja's jurisdiction. It's a powerful illustration of the potency of the holy name.
And it wasn't like he chanted it many times, just that once.
The emphasis is often on that one potent utterance at the critical moment, though the principle applies to regular chanting too. It freed him.
Wow. And we also have those near-death experiences you mentioned, people reporting things that sound similar.
Yes, Candida Devi Dasi describes seeing those terrifying figures, the Yamadutas, in a dark tunnel with hooks and ropes, matching the scriptural descriptions quite closely.
And Bhaktin Subhadra. Her story sounds intense.
Extremely. She described an endless trip to hell during a coma after a suicide attempt. What's remarkable is that she later recognized the tortures she experienced as being described in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, which she hadn't known before. That experience completely turned her life around towards devotion.
That's incredible. And Subhangi Devi Dasi's account of her father's death.
Also very striking.
Mhm.
She described seeing beings with boar-like tusks, matching some descriptions of Yamadutas, witnessing her father's distress, maybe what some call terminal restlessness. And she responded by chanting her Krishna during his final hours, trying to help him.
These personal accounts add a whole different dimension, don't they? They make it feel less abstract.
They really do. And significantly, the Bhagavatam itself includes Yamaraja giving instructions to his Yamadutas.
Oh, what does he tell them?
He explicitly says, "Do not go near the devotees of the Lord. Those who have fully surrendered to Krishna, who always chant his names, who remember his lotus feet, who bow down to him, stay away from them. Because," he says, "they are protected by the Lord himself, by his Sudarshana Chakra or his club. They are not under my jurisdiction." He tells the Yamadutas only to bring those who are averse to the Lord, those who haven't taken shelter of him.
So devotion offers direct protection from this whole system of karmic judgment after death.
That's the clear message. The texts state that the actual purpose of human life, even the societal structure like Vansharama, is ultimately meant to help people come closer to pleasing Lord Veen.
And if people ignore that purpose.
Then they fall under Yamaraja's authority for judgment and the consequences we've discussed.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the core takeaway for you? Where does this leave us?
For me, it comes back to that beautiful idea from Bhaktivinoda Thakura's song, Mama Mana Mandir. My heaven, my sacred place, is right here within my own mind, my own heart.
When you make it a temple for Krishna.
Exactly. When you invite the Lord to reside within your consciousness through devotion, through chanting his names, through remembering him, you create an internal Vaikuntha, a spiritual reality.
So it's not about physically going somewhere, but cultivating an inner state.
Precisely. That devotional consciousness transcends the material dualities of suffering and temporary happiness. It goes beyond the reach of earthly troubles and even the jurisdiction of Yamaraja.
Because, as Yamaraja himself said, his agents shouldn't approach devotees.
Right. Engaging in that devotional service becomes the ultimate duty, the ultimate protection. It creates a heavenly state of being within, offering true freedom from that whole cycle of birth, death, suffering, and karmic consequence.
So the final word is one of hope, then, despite the potentially grim descriptions of consequences.
Absolutely. It's a path to protection and liberation offered by the Supreme Lord himself. For anyone who sincerely turns towards him and takes shelter, the promise is there, creating that heaven of consciousness within your own heart.
That's a powerful place to end. Thanks for exploring all of this today.
Thank you. It's been fascinating.